What's going on in the insurance world? In fact, for most of us, we don't really understand insurance. Often we just look for the cheapest price out there and just jump on that one. But unfortunately, the cheapest price is not always the answer for getting your insurance needs covered. And that's why I invited Dan Cheek on the podcast today to talk about his agency and insurance as a whole, not just so that we can understand it better, but also so we can learn about what's it like for someone who started an agency and has been running an agency and working in the insurance world for 35 years now. I'll have some information about Dan's Allstate agency down in the description below. And otherwise, enjoy today's episode. Before we dive in, here's a quick word from one of the sponsors of the show. Check this out, and we'll be back soon. When disaster strikes in your home, do you know who to count on? I'm talking about when water damage, fire damage, or mold becomes a problem in your house. You need someone that you can trust who's going to get your house back in working order. That's why I love recommending Best Option Restoration here in Northwest Arkansas. Best Option Restoration is the perfect choice for when you need that initial response for damage in your home. They're a national leader here in our Northwest Arkansas community, and they are restoration specialists that can give you the peace of mind you need when you're facing the unthinkable. Your home is somewhere special, which is why you need someone who sees the value in your home and wants to get you taken care of as quickly and efficiently as possible. Best Option Restoration is so committed to helping you with your home that they have an answer line that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where you can talk to an actual person about getting a specialist out to your home and resolving whatever damages you're seeing in your house. So if you experienced fire damage, water damage, or discovered mold in your home, call Best Option Restoration today to restore your house back to the home you love. Call 479-458-8840 or click the link in the episode description to contact Best Option Restoration today. Dan, so great to have you on the podcast today.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Now, the listeners have already heard an introduction about who you are, what you do. Go ahead and give us the elevator pitch.
30 years in the business, still passionate about it, still enjoy it. I really enjoy educating customers. I really enjoy leading people. So I have a team of 5 right now that they're just a great team. We have a lot of fun and just really enjoyed my time in the business.
Is 30 years, is that a rare stat or?
I find it's not really. If people are acclimated to this business, I see people burn out in 3 years or last for 25, 30, 35. I have one friend that's been in the business 47 years, still going.
Wow.
And I think I've got another at least 5 in me.
What's the difference between the person who burns out and then the person who sticks with it?
I think some of it is just natural ability, personality. Not everybody. I've hired a lot of people that I thought were going to be great, and it just wasn't for them for one reason or another. But when I got into the business, I thought insurance was going to be pretty nerdy, and I thought it was going to be very short term. And I guess I'm nerdy because I really loved it.
I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions or myths in insurance, and
completely.
And even as a business owner, I feel like one of your biggest pain points is always competing on price and getting it cheaper.
More so, yes.
Can you walk us through? I give the general, I know there are myths if you want to dive into that, but especially the price thing, because not all insurance agencies are built the same, and not that you would, down a competitor, but I have found that people don't always realize the value of someone you can trust in this world,
right? Rather
than just chasing the cheapest.
And I think that has never been more important than it is right now in the last few years, and for multiple reasons. Number one, I've never in my life witnessed the level year after year inflation that we've seen since COVID. I've never experienced that. And it has really taken a toll on the insurance industry.
Can we get a bit more specific? Like, I mean,
yes,
we all know price. Chances are the average person listening to this episode is listening to it around when it goes live. But there could be someone, hopefully if you're listening 3 years from now, the price of eggs is normal again. Right. But I feel like this is like the two places I go to in terms of specifics is price of eggs,
right?
Which is a really big talking point. But I also think about fast food prices.
Right.
Like you go get fast food and suddenly now fast food doesn't seem
it's
to
not
really...
as cheap, is it?
It's wild, right? Like
exactly.
It's like, wow, my Taco Bell was $22. Like what just happened?
Right. And I think the labor cost is the one thing that has not stabilized at all. And maybe, that's really well warranted. I think some people really needed to get paid more. And that began to happen. In COVID, we had... you saw all of the want ads at McDonald's and other fast food restaurants, $500 bonus.
I was going to say, the signing bonuses, right.
So, they're spending more on staff but products as well. And every link in the chain. And if you think about what a property and casualty insurance company pays for, and when I say property and casualty, I'm talking homes, boats, cars, of course, motorcycles, things like that. The inflation on those items was, unbelievable. A sheet of plywood or OSB, they call it, roof decking went from $12 a sheet to $75 a sheet temporarily. Okay. Now it's normalized some, but it's not gone back to that original price. Labor cost.
Was this COVID like supply chain issues?
Yes, it absolutely was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a great deal of our lumber came out of Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. And Canada had some very, very strict rules regarding COVID and COVID prevention, and that industry just shut down. Okay.
I remember the price of lumber.
It was
like you're seeing a headline about this.
Oh, it was just extraordinary, right? So when a home was damaged, I mean, the fires didn't stop, right?
Yeah,
windstorms didn't stop. When homes
world stopped except for these things that happen on a regular basis.
Exactly. So the cost of repairing a home went up dramatically, both on the labor side and the materials side. Cars. I don't remember, if you remember what happened, new cars went up about 25%. Used cars were up 45%. Okay. And that meant that more and more cars got totaled. Okay. Because the cost of repairing them, the parts weren't available. We had one situation where a guy bought a brand new pickup truck, a Nissan pickup truck. It was a brand new redesign. Okay. He had it 6 weeks and wrecked it. And this was during COVID, and there were no parts to fix his truck. So on what would have been about a $13,000 claim, we had to total the vehicle, $45,000. Okay. So I guess the cost of insurance then is going up also pretty tremendously. Okay. I mean, the rate increases all over the United States, but in our area as well. Arkansas has actually been spared tremendous rate increases, but places on the coast, Texas, Florida, California,
those places are much higher risk?
Higher risk.
Okay.
Yeah, much higher risk, and there's a lot of different factors. Regulatory issues are one of the factors. So all states have different personalities as far as their regulation, which is sometimes driven by the political atmosphere in that state. Arkansas historically has been very pro-consumer, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But also, I think they have pretty good and reasonable regulations. What a lot of people don't know about insurance pricing is it's not just based on the whim of the insurance company. There is an insurance commissioner for every state, just like a utilities commission. Okay. You and I have both lived in Texas, and I remember a couple of times when the utility commission decided to raise rates and then go looking for authorization to get those rates. The utility commission said you can have 4%, you can't have 7%. And I got a refund check with interest in the mail back from the utility company. Well, in insurance commissions work very similarly. The insurance company can raise rates and then go looking for permission, or they can get the permission ahead of time. Most of them get the permission ahead of time. They go in with their data saying, we need this much rate increase to stay viable, profitable. And the insurance company, the rating commission or the Department of Insurance has to make a decision on whether or not they get all or some of that rate increase. And this really created a crisis in California because the several things caused to crisis in California, but one of the main things was the very, very harsh regulation that an insurance company could not raise rates. They had a threshold on what they could raise rates, but the risk that was created there really changed the risk profile of the whole state, and not mitigating fire risk before it happened.
Yeah. I was going to say, I read some headline about with the fires in LA that there was it wasn't going to be uncommon for people to not get their house wouldn't have been covered in retrospect. Like maybe they didn't. And it's one of those examples like where you read the headline, but you didn't read the full article. So I can't
see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, the thing is that the insurance companies and the state was involved as well. In California, they had a insurer of last resort, basically, for some California residents that could not get insurance through typical means through a commercial insurance company. They had a state plan to sell them insurance, but even the state plan was highly restricted in the amount of coverage they were offering. Same thing's happening. I have a daughter that lives in Florida. The coverage there, she's got an older home and can't find a commercial insurer to provide her insurance. So she had to go to the insurer of last resort. And that policy is really pretty inadequate when I look at it. So we've had to add some coverage through private carriers to get her properly insured. And she wouldn't have known that. Yeah. Right. Even being raised in my household, she wouldn't have known that. These are just things that insurance agents, I guess what I'm trying to express more than anything here as far as to the consumer right now, whether it's for commercial insurance or private insurance agents do have value. They do have value, and they're not always more expensive. When you said that a while ago about pricing, I think Progressive is the Progressive Insurance Company is an incredible story, incredible business story. They have become the largest insurer of automobiles and vehicles in the United States, even bigger than State Farm. Just vehicles, though. Okay, that's their specialty. Every dump truck, log truck you see on the road, 99% of them are insured with Progressive if they're insured. And so many cars, but they frustrate me. Their commercials frustrate me. You've got Flo in her smock with her pricing gun standing behind the conveyor belt with boxes of one size fits all protection, right? Yeah. A box of home insurance, a box of auto insurance. That just grates on me so badly because it is not a one size fits all world. And every age group and every income group needs different coverage. And usually people have it backwards. The people who have, they're 70 years old, they're retired, they get very concerned about keeping what they have, right? And protecting their retirement.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right? It does make sense. But a lot of times those people have retirement policies or they're drawing from their 401k. Okay? That's protected against lawsuit. Okay? They may have things in a trust, so it's protected against lawsuit. The most vulnerable people out there are the ones, probably you and your wife, okay? Where the majority of your earning years are ahead of you, okay? You're right in your wheelhouse of earnings.
Yeah.
And, there's no way to protect current and future earnings. There's no other way to protect that other than having the right amount of liability coverage. Okay? So liability coverage is the most important part of every policy. I think it is. Even if you have a $800,000 home, if that house burned down and you didn't have protection, it would be a horrible, horrible thing. Bankrupt you most likely. Okay,
I don't like that.
It'd be a horrible decision not to have insurance, right? Mm-hmm. But even more so, if you don't have enough liability insurance, if you get sued, and all of us could at any time. In fact, that's another. I'm going to divert just a second. So this was one other thing that drove insurance rates up during COVID and since is for some reason. The litigation of bodily injury accidents is up over 55%.
Why is
since
that?
Then.
Do you have a theory, or
I have my own conservative white guy version of why that might be happening, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
We don't really know.
Well, there's got to be some kind of similarly related.
I think there's just some people that got really comfortable not going to work or maybe getting some checks in the mail and things like this and this lifestyle change. And they see that as an opportunity possibly to maintain it. Instead of settling quickly, they want to hire an attorney. Anyway, that's just another aspect. But think about this. If you don't have enough liability, the minimum liability limits for auto insurance in this state is $25,000 bodily injury per person, $50,000 per accident. That's the state minimum. About 60% of the people in Arkansas have state minimum liability limits. So if someone hits you, okay, and they have state minimum liability, $25,000 is the most they're going to pay for any injury to you. Okay, if you hit someone, same thing. If you only had $25,000, that can be 1 day in the hospital. 1 day. Okay, and intensive care can be in excess of $25,000. One care flight is going to be a minimum of about $38,000. Okay, when an insurance company sees that the bill is going to exceed the limits, they write a check for that limit and send it to the claimant, and then they'll send the insured. Let's say it's you or you're at fault or I'm at fault. They would send me a letter that says, "We have paid the limits of your policy. Good luck." Okay, with the rest of it. Okay, and not only is the real cost of that claim going to come out of your pocket, but all the litigation cost. The beauty of liability coverage is that you have transferred that risk to the insurance company. The insurance company is now defending their money, and they do it vigorously. You get defended de facto, right? And if you have enough liability insurance, it's not something you have to worry about. But I have been on the periphery of one lawsuit, and it was extremely unpleasant, okay, and nerve-wracking for me. I don't like conflict, right? So I would not want to be unprotected from a liability aspect. And it's usually very, very inexpensive to close that gap. But what happens, because I think Progressive and other insurance companies have commoditized insurance through advertisement over the last few years, and it has made it all about price. Most people, when they go shopping for insurance, are simply price focused, and for good reason, because it's going up. All right.
Well, for me, I grew up with the Geico commercial. The lizard, dude, I'm like butchering.
The caveman.
So easy a caveman could do it.
Right.
And then what was the other one? Like, give me 10 seconds to show you how I can save you 15% or more on 15%
your car.
That'll commercial. So I think you're spot on. I think the advertising is entirely all around price. I imagine someone like you, 30 years in the business, you've probably done a pretty good job of, I think for business owners, like there's this sort of sixth sense you develop with a prospective customer of understanding what they really care about,
right,
and understanding if you're the right fit. And it feels like the longer, like for me being in business for 6.5 years, I can typically know in the first 60 seconds if this person's a good customer or not.
right.
And not like in an ego way, but just, hey, how to guide them elsewhere or recommend them out elsewhere.
Right.
I think for a lot of our listeners, there are people who are brand new to the business world, and they really want any customer they can get. And kind of the negative or the caveat with this is you get that customer who's hyper, and it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, of course, we all think about price.
Right.
But do you have any advice for that person who, they're inundated with a customer who they're fixated constantly on price. They always want to start with a pricing conversation. Excuse me. And if you're not the cheapest, it's, I'm going to the competitor. Like, how do you typically approach that?
Well, I think first of all, with kindness, with empathy, but we try to find out the intent right up front. We ask, why do you happen to be calling today? Are you, is it price only, or is there a service issue involved? And people will open up and tell you. And sometimes it is they're upset about something, a claim or service or things like that they got from another company. Sometimes they're being non-renewed. There's a lot of reasons that people are shopping, but primarily it is price. And when we find that out, then we do our best to educate. Our motto in my office, we say it all the time, is we educate so that you can make good decisions. All right. So we try to slow the person down and get them to listen to, what does this cover and why is it important to you? It's more difficult. People are busy, and, we do a lot of business through texting now, which
is that strange? Like,
well, it is less personal, right? And it's very difficult to communicate, but I do require that we have at least one conversation, verbally with the customer before we go ahead and buying the policies. But education is just such an important part of this. People need to know what is not covered. Okay.
This feels like I just feel like I've paid for my own insurance for 2 decades, and sometimes it just hits me how little I really truly understand.
Right.
I think the extent, the most I understand is those limits on like bodily injury, and at least legally making sure you can pay out for the other person if you're at fault. But I mean, I have to imagine there's so many misconceptions, or what I run into, and we talk a lot about on the podcast, is unrelated to insurance, but even in other disciplines, the kind of customer who's like, well, my uncle's in your world and they told me that I could get X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's illogical. Right. It's like, what does your uncle do again? It's something strange.
Yeah.
And so I find myself sometimes in these conversations of trying to build trust quickly enough where the person doesn't feel like I'm taking advantage of them or I'm guiding them incorrectly, but also trying to be candid enough to say, like, here's a really great example. So like my agency does SEO marketing. And so getting people ranking on page 1 of Google.
Right.
So we're really transparent and upfront about that of like, like I was just on a sales call the other day where the person said, so like about 60 days. And I said, it's going to take about a year.
Right.
And he was like, I'm going to be number one. I was like, probably not. I said, number one, that's a company that they're spending tens of thousands of dollars for that spot. Page 1, but you're not going to be number one unless you have a different budget intention. Well, he was like, wow, I was talking to someone else where they said they'd get me to number one in like 14 days. And it's like, no. That's just not the case. But it's up to me, though, to build trust in that conversation.
Yes. You get frustrated because people have been told what they want to hear.
Right.
And then you're not agreeing.
From someone trying to make the sale.
Exactly.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now you're telling them the truth.
Yeah.
And they're just going to have to make a decision.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And, I'm very fortunate in this stage in my career where I will walk a customer. I will tell them just, we're not a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And I sleep better at night. When we mentioned minimum liability limits on auto a while ago, my team cannot sell a policy with minimum limits on liability until they come to me with a rationale. And then we send that customer a very firmly worded email that they have to reply to.
Yeah.
And say, I understand, and this is what I choose. Okay.
Yeah.
Same thing with like actual cash value homeowner policies or landlord policies or things like this. If it's not replacement cost, they don't understand that. Okay. They think, this looks like good coverage to me. These limits are okay. But, if a policy is not replacement cost, that means everything about that claim is going to be depreciated. And, flooring, 15 years, 20 years maybe, cabinetry, whatever it is, your $1,000 deductible is now $12,000, on a $20,000 claim.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? They don't get it. So we just don't sell them.
Yeah.
I won't sell an actual cash value policy. Just won't do it.
And I love that you mentioned that too, because I think there's a great business insight there of I would never, I'm going to say this one time and then I'm never going to say it again, because I had someone share this with me that thinks great advice, but I don't typically say this because I don't want people to think I'm being mean, but I had a business mentor years ago who he said, Blake, people are stupid and you're going to explain it to them and they're going to say they get it, but they really don't get it.
Right.
And I don't really operate with that philosophy of like everyone's dumb. But more and more, though, I have realized that people are really good at feigning that they get it because they don't want to be embarrassed.
Right.
And then when the rubber meets the road, you realize they really didn't get it. And now you're in an awkward situation because they're mad that. So in my world, like for like podcasting, for example, when someone comes to me and want to start a podcast show, I find myself more and more having really earnest, candid conversations on outcomes and timeline so that someone can really understand what they're investing themselves in. And I was in a conversation with a guy a few months ago who was wanting to do a podcast episode. I won't say what it was on because he may listen to the show. I don't want him to feel bad. But he wanted to do a podcast on a very niche thing. And I said, okay, can you do it for 100 episodes? And he said, well, no, I'd run out of things to talk about. And I said, then you don't need to do it because that's about how long it's going to take you to build momentum around the show. And by having those earnest conversations now, it prevents me from getting into a situation where it's episode 20, episode 30, or really, frankly, we're so, quick paced in this stuff, episode 5,
right?
Where someone's like, why isn't this working? Well, because you just started, so those communicative conversations have paid off for me. And it sounds like in the same way, having those conversations with your customers is a real staple for your business.
It is. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really helps us is storytelling. Okay. And again, I've said it so many times, 30 years, which blows my mind that I've been doing this for 30 years. But I've got a lot of personal stories with customers, but I have also borrowed some from other agents and mentors of mine that, to tell a story about a loss, about a misunderstanding of coverage, to really make a person, see and feel the repercussions of not being covered properly versus just saying, hey, you need this.
Yeah. Right.
That's going in one ear and out the other. But a lot of times, I think in sales in general of all different types of things, and we're all selling every day, right?
Yeah, right.
I think storytelling is super powerful. It helps people visualize what they can't in themselves sometimes. So that's a powerful part of what we do.
Well, coming to the end of the podcast episode, what advice do you have for maybe smaller agencies, or not even people in insurance, people who are just starting out, who are thinking about what they want to build long term, maybe even getting like their first group of customers? If you can remember 30 years back, that moment where you were like, okay, this thing's going to work like this.
Right.
I'm building something that has momentum to it. Any advice for the person trying to get to that point?
Work really, really hard on your centers of influence. Networking is the most effective way for consistency. It's also the least expensive in our world. With the limitations in what we can do with the phone, which granted, I love it. Okay. I don't love spam calls. I bought a car, last February, and I'm still getting the daily calls about, trying to sell me a warranty. It's humorous, if it wasn't so awful.
Yeah.
But then direct mail became much more popular. Well, your mailbox is likely flooded if you're a homeowner with renewal offers and homeowner flyers. Okay, so that's become less powerful. Okay, the response rate on mailings has gone way, way down. So all of these older ways that we acquired business. Now it's internet leads. So people see an ad on the internet, they click a box, they fill out some information, and a company comes and sells a lead to me. And boy, they really vary in
quality.
In quality, yes. Yeah. But the thing is, asking your existing happy customers, who do you know?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then getting out in the community and talking, volunteering, and with a good organization, joining a networking group, going by and visiting people who can help you, helping them build their business. Mortgage bankers are a real good resource for me. Well, the way I have things set up is that we help them build their business, and that's what keeps their consistency coming.
It's the Zig Ziglar quote. You get what you want by helping other people get what they want.
Exactly.
And I love that you mentioned this too, because I do think that especially younger business owners are really energized around easy button answers. And they see the ad that's like, hey, leads brought to you. You only pay for what we send you. And it sounds really snazzy and really sexy and all these things. And one of the things I talk a lot about on the show is having clear eyes around these things that are effectively too good to be true. And remember, I just had I had 2 episodes recently. One was called about silver bullets,
right?
And understanding that there are no silver bullets in business. There's more effective practices versus less effective, but there is no, anyone who sells you just send this one email, just do this one thing. It's not going to work. And then the other episode that I put out was called Do the Work. And the whole premise of it was, there's here in Northwest Arkansas, we have a slew of networking events.
Right.
I mean, I probably sub or visit a BNI almost weekly.
Right.
There's no shortage of this stuff. But I remember talking to a guy. This probably would have been about 4 or 5 years ago. He was starting his business and he was like, what do you do for your customers to get more customers? And I said, well, I used to go to this Wednesday morning thing. I go to this Friday morning. And at that point, I wasn't a BNI. I said, so yeah, I do all these things. And he was like, okay, I don't really want to do any of that. And I was kind of like, well, unless you have like another answer, there is no business. And I think this is a hard truth for all of our listeners. And I love that you said we're all selling. Because for our listeners, a lot of us get into our practice out of passion for what it is. And we don't want to be a salesperson. But understanding that if you are going to grow the business, you do have to wear the sales hat. You do have to do the work. You do have to go out and meet people. And I love that caveat that you gave of serving other people and getting them what they want. And that will in turn get you what you want.
Yeah, you really have to keep people motivated. I mean, they may, start out giving you a referral here or there, but, my goal is if somebody gives me a referral, I want the person they referred to me to call them back and thank them, for sitting. I want it to be that strong of an experience. So that's one thing. The other thing that I will say is when you start to grow your business and you're adding employees, hire slowly, fire quickly. If they're not a fit, move on.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to respect and nurture the culture in your business.
Yeah.
That it is safe, that it is a good, fun. I think we ought to have fun. Let's make it fun, and let's make going to work not be a drudgery where we
Sunday night
we like each other and we have a good time, but also set extremely clear expectations.
Yes,
I am not a micromanager. I have lots of friends in this business that kind of are.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have the time or energy to, look over somebody's shoulder every day. And so I set very, very clear expectations of what the goals are and what needs to be done. And hopefully they're motivated enough to go take care of it. And they're not without guidance. They're not without training.
Right.
But they're, after a certain point, you've got to be your own self-starter. And so finding good people, I think that's even more difficult than it's been. So that's another key to the business too, is you can't grow without replicating yourself. And I've found that you get somebody to, you can't learn this business in 6 months or even a year and a half. If you can get someone to about 60% competency, let them go and expect them to make some mistakes. Just give them some boundaries and let them go, because you've got to develop people quickly. And there's no better way to develop them than get them in the game.
Man, this is a whole nother conversation. I wish we had time for. I just want to add, I really love something you pointed out that I think is a real pitfall for business owners. You mentioned a culture that people want to work in.
Right.
And I think sometimes people think that these two things are opposing, of high accountability and effective culture. And this is one of the most consistent conversations that I have with business owners who manage teams is you can have both and you should have both.
Right.
You should really be investing in the culture where people enjoy coming to work. They're not calling out sick or, because that's costing you dollars, obviously. But they want to come to work. They want to work hard. And on the same token, it's incredibly clear what the expectations are. And I found that a lot of business owners feel like there's something in opposition there when really it's not.
Well, there kind of is in a way, but you've got to just learn how to temper that. We all of my employees have children, and they have doctor's appointments and parent-teacher conferences and ball games and things like this. And we do our very best to work around those things. We want them to have a life, and be able to enjoy that. But I'm not compromising on the expectation.
Yeah.
Right. We've got a business to run.
Yeah.
And you need to be here, and you need to be on time and in the meetings and participating and do what you're supposed to do. And if you're consistent in getting those tasks done, meeting your goals, I have a lot of latitude for people that need to go have life, and that helps too.
Well, Dan, this has been a great conversation.
It's been fun.
I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you. It's been
people
fun.
Who want to catch up, connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
My agency, the phone number is 479-636-4919. That's not the one that you'll see if you look me up, Dan Cheek Agency or Dan Cheek Allstate Agency in Bentonville, Arkansas. That's not the primary number, but that one will take you to a phone tree. 636-4919 will take you directly to the agency after a very short pause. And dancheek@allstate.com is how to email me if you have any questions or, whatever. But we're, again, I love educating people, whether they become customers the first round or not. A lot of times we gain customers after 2 or 3 years of conversations with them. So, yeah, welcome everybody to give me a call and use me as a resource.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Hey, for our listeners, if you're a first-time listener, what the heck you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are. Don't forget, if you want to support the podcast, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Or if you're a business that wants to advertise on the show, you can always reach out Blake at goodadvicecoaching.com. We appreciate our sponsors and people who support the podcast. And of course, I appreciate you for tuning into today's episode. I'll have all of Dan's information in the episode description below, so you can reach out and connect with him. All that to say, that's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.